All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something that's so fundamental to being human, we barely even notice it. It's powerful, it's mysterious, and it's our deep, instinctual, totally unshakable connection to story.
And yeah, when you hear the word addiction, you're probably thinking about binging the latest hit show, right? But it goes so much deeper than that. This is something that's woven into the very fabric of who we are. It shapes everything. Our entertainment, sure, but also our politics, our beliefs, even the wild, crazy stories our brain tells itself every single night when we dream.
But here's the big question we're going to tackle. What if this addiction isn't a flaw at all? What if it isn't just some mental junk food we can't seem to quit? What if it's actually our greatest survival tool? The very thing that made us human in the first place? Okay, so to really get that, we first have to admit something to ourselves. We are absolutely powerless against a good story. Seriously, it's a force so strong it feels less like something we choose to listen to and more like, well, like a kind of magic. You've probably heard that phrase, the willing suspension of disbelief, right? The idea that when we read a book or watch a movie, we make a conscious choice to believe it for a while. Well, here's a radical idea. That's not actually what happens. Your will has almost nothing to do with it. A really good storyteller doesn't ask for your permission to come in. They just do. They invade your mind and completely take over. Okay, let's try a little experiment. Just listen to these words. A whaling ship discovers a small boat adrift at sea. Inside, there are two men. Their skin is covered in sores, and they're sucking the marrow from the bones of their dead shipmates. Now, be honest. For just a split second, were you still listening to me? Or were you on that boat? Could you almost see it? That immediate jump, that transportation out of your chair and into that scene, that is the unavoidable spell of a story. So, if stories have this incredible power over us, that leads to a really strange puzzle. We always say fiction is escapism, right? A way to get away from it all. So why is it so often about the very things we would run screaming from in real life? I mean, think about it. In your actual life, you want safety, you want comfort, you want predictability. A successful trip to the grocery store is one where nothing exciting happens. But in a story, we demand the exact opposite. We want danger, conflict, crisis. A book about an accountant having a totally normal, boring day, no one would read that. But you add a murder, a conspiracy, some huge drama, now we're hooked. This massive difference between what we want in life and what we want in fiction, well, that's a huge clue to what's really going on. And that clue leads us to a really powerful theory. What if fiction isn't about escaping life at all? What if it's about practicing for it? Think of stories as the original virtual reality. They're like a flight simulator for the human brain. We get to run through all these high-stakes social and survival scenarios, love, betrayal, danger, moral dilemmas, but without any of the real-world risk. It's practice, all from the safety of our couch. And this focus on trouble, it starts really young. Just think about how kids play. Sure, sometimes it's a tea party, but more often it's about being lost or fighting monsters or playing cops and robbers. And it never stops. Just look at our dreams. The most common dream themes across all cultures are things like being chased, being attacked, or falling. That's no coincidence. Trouble is the fat red thread that connects all forms of story, from childhood play to our darkest nightmares. All right, so if we're literally hardwired for this stuff, the next logical question is, where? Where in the brain is this happening? Well, we're going to dive into some absolutely fascinating neuroscience that points to the exact machine in our heads responsible for this constant, relentless need to tell stories. So let's look at a classic experiment done with split brain patients. These are people where the connection between the two halves of their brain has been severed, so the left and right sides can't talk to each other. Okay, so first, the researchers flash an image of a snowy scene, but they show it only to the patient's right brain. Now, since the right brain controls the left hand, the patient's left hand correctly points to a picture of a shovel. Makes sense, right? You see snow, you need a shovel. Then they do the same thing on the other side. They flash a picture of a chicken claw, but this time only to the left brain. And since the left brain controls the right hand, the patient's right hand correctly points to a picture of a chicken. So far, so good. Each half of the brain saw something and responded perfectly logically. But this is where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. The researcher then asks the patient, so why did you point to the shovel? Now, you have to remember, the part of the brain that speaks, the left hemisphere, only saw the chicken claw.
It has zero idea that the right brain ever saw a snowy scene. All it knows is that it saw its own body, the left hand, point to a shovel for no apparent reason. So what does the brain do when faced with two unrelated facts, a chicken and a shovel? It instantly, without hesitation, invents a story to connect them. The patient just says, "Oh, that's simple. You need a shovel to clean out the chicken coop." Boom. It just made that up. The neuroscientist who discovered this, Michael Gazzaniga, calls this part of our brain the interpreter, and its job is to create a plausible story to connect the dots, even if it has to invent the dots itself. And this interpreter is always working. It's a relentless 24/7 meaning-making machine. And here's the thing. It is absolutely allergic to randomness, to coincidence, to uncertainty. It just can't stand a vacuum. So if it can't find a true, meaningful pattern in the chaos of life, it will simply manufacture one. And this is the same impulse that, when it goes haywire, leads to things like conspiracy theories. The brain would rather believe a compelling lie than accept a meaningless, random truth. Okay, so let's take this one step further. This little storyteller in our head isn't just making sense of the outside world. Oh no. Its biggest, most ambitious, most important story is you. It's your very sense of self. And this personal narrator, it has a pretty serious bias. It always wants to cast us as the hero of the story. You see this in what's called the Lake Wobegon effect, where pretty much everyone thinks they're above average. Get this, a staggering 90% of drivers think they are better than the average driver. And it gets crazier. 94% of college professors think they do above average work. Now that's mathematically impossible, of course. But for our internal storyteller telling us we're the good guy, it's absolutely essential. So how does it pull this off? How does it maintain this heroic self-image, even when reality disagrees? Simple. It edits our memories. See, memory isn't like a video camera, perfectly recording everything as it happened. Nope, it's more like a screenwriter who is constantly doing rewrites on the script of your life. It smooths out the rough patches, highlights your best moments, and reframes your mistakes to fit this coherent and usually pretty flattering story of you. And here's maybe the most surprising part of this whole thing. According to the psychologist Shelley Taylor, these little self-serving lies, these positive illusions, they aren't a bug in our mental software. They're a feature. They actually work as a crucial defense mechanism. They shield us from the harsh, often depressing realities of the world and, frankly, are a big part of what allows us to get out of bed in the morning and face the day. So what does this all boil down to? It means that your identity, who you think you are, isn't some fixed objective fact. It's a story. It's a personal myth that you are constantly writing, constantly editing, and constantly performing. You are the protagonist of a grand first-person drama that you're telling to an audience of one, yourself. And that story doesn't just reflect who you are, it actively creates who you become. And that leaves us with one last, kind of tricky question to think about. We've just seen how our minds are literally built to make things up, to connect dots that aren't there, and to spin tales that make us look good. So, knowing all that, when it comes to the story of your life, the one you tell yourself every single day, how reliable a narrator are you, really?